just to reply to the follow-up question there in my last video, which was about if I had any fear that I was gonna go over my baseline when I was recovering, and if I used brain retraining on that. Yeah, fear was one of the biggest obstacles that I faced and still do deal with. But I'll try and share some of the things that did help me with that. But yeah, like fear is totally understandable when you're dealing with something like CFS, because when it gets programmed into you that, you know, if you go and do anything that you're going to crash after, like it's totally normal that there's going to be a lot of fear involved with that. And yeah, it's kind of getting to the, you know, to that stage where it is so scary to actually try and bounce your boundaries on your baseline. It does get really scary, but it is my opinion, and at least this was the case for me, that without having to step into that fear, you just end up staying in the same place or going backwards or getting worse, in my experience anyway. So even though, like, you know, pushing and all that, those sort of words are like very controversial when it comes to CFS, like to a certain extent I did have to push through my fears a little bit to get better. So yeah, fear is definitely something that I really faced in my recovery. So I'm trying to think of ways that I found to manage that, even though I still don't think I 100% managed it very well. But the things that worked for me, I suppose, like keeping an eye on pacing kind of was a little bit of a comfort blanket in a way, because I knew, you know, that I wasn't going to go completely over the top and crash. And because I had like a spreadsheet, I'm such a nerd when it comes to these things, because I had a spreadsheet that had, you know, all my activity on, and I would only increase it like very gently, then I felt sort of in control of that. But I don't think that's really dealing with the fear itself, really. But that was one thing that helped me be not just as afraid. And another thing as well would be exposure. So like an example of that would be when I joined the gym, and I put off joining the gym for so long because of the fear. Like I was just so terrified to even go near it, because, you know, I tried many attempts of going back to the gym, and I always went back too soon, and then I would do stuff and then I would have a big massive crash. And yeah, I became petrified, absolutely petrified of going near the place. But like as things were getting better, you know, I kind of knew it was a good time for me to give it a go, but the fear was there. So eventually I did join the gym, and I went through a process of what I would call exposure. So that involved going to the gym and not doing anything. So like the first time I went, I only just looked at the gym and signed up, and like just getting there was actually quite exhausting at that time. And then I used to go, because the gym had like, you know, a jacuzzi and a sauna, which I absolutely loved. Like I started to go and just do that, and then eventually I would maybe do like 2 links in the pool, and just very, very little. But it was more just getting my body to associate the gym as something positive. So it wasn't as scary then. And then eventually I did step foot in the gym, and I was lifting like the tiniest little dumbbells, but like because I had exposed myself, you know, I felt comfortable. And then for me as well, just speaking about the gym, I did get a personal trainer who seemed to really understand what I was going through. And honestly, I don't think I would have been able to do it without him, because I think just having him there just made it feel less scary. And the way we worked it was I do like a session maybe once a month. like strength sessions, so no cardio. And like, yeah, he took me for a session like at the beginning just to see where I was at. And then we gauged how I felt the next day with what we thought we could start with. And for me, that was such a game changer. But I was ready. I was ready for it. Well, ish. Like, there was definitely a lot of ups and downs in the process of strength training. But yeah, I think it was a good time. And I still had a lot of fear, but it was at that point where I could afford to push a little bit. So that really helped me, having the personal training. Another thing I think that can really help the fear is before you go to do anything that might be slightly bouncing your baseline, is to be in a really calm state of mind before doing it. So like for me, that would involve doing some meditation. Like, let's say, for example, when I was pacing my walks, I would, lie down like for a bit, just get in the right state of mind, because as soon as you are starting to panic before you do anything and your head's going a million miles an hour and you're thinking, am I going to crash after this? Is this going to set me back? And then you're thinking, all these thoughts, you're going to be so tense when you do the thing. You're going to be in a stress state. Your body's going to just, flip out because it's going to think, oh, here we go again. So I think getting into a calm state of mind to begin with. And for me, what really helped was after the exercise, so a walk, for example, I would immediately come in, lie down and meditate for like 10 minutes. Or because I have my sauna blanket, I would go on that. And again, that is a sort of like changing the association of the thing to make it feel positive. Because for me, it was like a real treat, coming in, getting in my sauna blanket, and then I was like really calm. And it just let the dust settle a bit, stopped me overthinking, am I going to be suffering tomorrow? So that really, really helped. So that's another thing. Another thing that really helped me deal with fear, and this is a controversial one, and I feel very uncertain about talking about this, but I looked into Dr. Sarno's work on TMS, which is tension myositis syndrome, and I disagree with a lot of what he says. Personally, like, because there's a part where he says, like CFS, is a psychosomatic problem, and it's because of suppressed emotions. Like, I personally don't believe that, especially because, my onset was a mosquito virus, autoimmune problem, and like these things that like, it wasn't suppressed anger, at least in my opinion. That's just how I feel. But the reason why his work really helped me with fear was because, it just talks in his book, The Mind-Body Prescription. He talks a lot about, not being afraid and that everything's okay, everything's going to be okay. And there was something reassuring about reading that. Like, when I was at a certain point, if I had read that, in the early days, I would have thrown the book out the window. Like, I would have been so angry, I would have ripped it to shreds. But in the stages where I was able to, start pacing my exercise, like, it really helped. So I think the quickest way to know if that theory is going to help you is to just read his book, The Mind-Body Prescription. Or there's a couple of YouTube videos, like a lecture where they talk about his work as well. So for me, in the later stages, that really, really helped, and I still occasionally do listen to like his work, because I do still deal with the fear like right now, because next week I'm going to America for this big trip, and like I do still deal with fear, but it's manageable now, and like obviously like I've been able to get through it enough to get to where I am. But yeah, so might be worth checking that out. But otherwise, like, yeah, I don't really know what else to recommend. Like, I would say I never 100% got over the fear, and it's just something that as I got stronger and fitter, the fear was always still there in the back of my mind, but I grew faith that my body was capable of what I was doing, which helped quieten the fear a little bit. But it's something that, like, it's completely understandable why you would be fearful. It makes total sense. It's like your body's natural defense against, the things that's making it crash. So, but yeah, and in terms of like brain retraining, yeah, I did use the brain retraining on the fears. Like I said in my last video about, when I was going a million miles an hour in my head before doing something, I would try and control the thoughts that were there. And yeah, I think as I was sort of able to be less fearful, things were improving. Like the thing that I was, say, really afraid of, being so afraid of the thing makes the thing more likely to happen, I think. But yeah, so it's definitely like trying to get a grip on fear is really useful. But I don't really have anything else to add there, I think. But it's a good question, and it is very relevant to me right now, because of like what's coming up in my next stage of life. But yeah, yeah. So I think that's all I'm gonna say now. So thank you for the question, and goodbye.